Imagine this. It's late on a Friday night. It's been raining pretty heavily all day, and now it continues into the night. Internet goes out, and now you have no idea what to do. You decide to head to your closet and pull out your old Nintendo 64. There's some dust on it, but not enough that it would make it unplayable. You hook it up and look for a game to play. The N64 has a lot of games, but there was always one that you preferred over all the others. You reach into the box where your games are kept and pull out your childhood copy of The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. You give the game a good blow and plug it into the system. The rain furiously crashes against your window as you start up your game. You run through the intro, getting Link's sword and shield, and make it to Hyrule Field. As you enter Hyrule Castle, you see something odd. Something you've never seen before. Or it might be better to call it someone or something. At the end of the entryway into town, you see an NPC that appears untextured. A girl with red hair and a white dress. You've never seen her before, and as you approach her, the screen begins to glitch. Then the power in your house goes out. Little did you know that the accidental power outage just saved you from the princess. The Princess is an internet urban legend that started life on a blog post in 2011. The story tells of an entity only known as the Princess. It follows in the steps of many of the already popular at the time gaming-themed creepypastas, Ben Drown and NES Godzilla to be exact. This story has always stuck with me for not only its premise but its entity. I was always someone who stayed up playing video games into the night. Fallout, Fable, the Souls series, I played it all. Something that I used to do was listen to creepypasta narrators while playing these games. This added an extra layer of creepiness to my explorations of the Wastelands, or any game really. This is why this story captured my imagination so strongly when I first read it. I always imagined running into some strange or creepy entity while exploring my single-player games. I would imagine it following me around and just watching me. The story of the princess is a long one, and I don't think it became nearly as viral as some of the other early internet horror stories. It deserves a proper full exploration of the story, themes, and where it could go forward. So let's start with a dive into the story. This is The Princess by Alex Lemley. Our story begins on a blogspot post titled The Princess. The first post sets the scene. What I'm about to tell you could put you in great danger. It could also save your life. There's a truth to the idea that what you don't know can't hurt you. In this case, one might say that what you don't know is less likely to be able to hurt you. It's a chance I have to take. If you're the type of person who could be warned sharks exist without immediately diving into the ocean to try and find one, please keep reading. This is a story. I apologize for its length. I'll divide it up into segments to make it an easier read. The story is necessary to give context to a warning. You might want me to skip directly to the warning. I can't. It wouldn't make sense. You wouldn't understand the reasoning. Worst of all, the warning alone would leave you with too many questions, and you might start prying further. As they say, curiosity killed the cat. Specifically, curiosity has killed at least 4 people thus far, but I'm getting way ahead of myself. We must first begin with my personal story. Immediately we were met with a vague post of what is to come. Let's continue. Our unnamed narrator starts with a summary of the importance and popularity of a Nintendo 64 game by the name of The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. This game they considered to be a cultural milestone in the history of gaming. This comes from the media and fan response of the game upon release. It was a game that truly felt like it was pushing the medium forward. It was also an important game to the narrator. One of his first online experiences as a kid was joining an Ocarina of Time fan site. When he was 13 years old, he was alone playing the game in his living room. He'd done just about everything in the game and was on his way to 100% completion, save for a few Skulltulas. While out at night in Hyrule Field is when he saw it. There in the field, easy to see, was an NPC that he'd never seen before. The NPC wasn't quite standing there, more floating barely above the ground. This is when he should have shut off the game, he notes. Of course, he didn't, though. He had to investigate. He had to see what this new occurrence could be, especially if it was a new event in his favorite game. The game was new enough at the time that they thought it could be something that the devs added to the game on purpose. As the narrator approached the new NPC, he got the feeling that they were wrong somehow. The NPC was a girl with red hair and wearing a white dress. She was floating slightly above the ground, as noted before. Her feet were together while her arms were spread out. The weirdest part seemed to be that there was no movement to this character at all. Her hair, her dress, neither were animated to move, even in an idle state. The narrator immediately pulls a parallel of the crucifixion, with the position of the feet and hands. It was very creepy and felt wrong just finding it. Especially with the final detail that sent a chill through him. She had no face. The overall feeling was that she was unfinished. There were no textures on her face, but even less so on her dress. There were no polygons on the back of her legs, meaning he could see right through her from that angle. His rational brain decided that it was probably a glitch. It was supposed to spawn the mailman NPC and instead spawned this untextured NPC. This would have been another good point to shut off the game. This phrase repeats throughout the story. Its importance and connections to the rest of the story will be explained in time. The narrator left Hyrule Field and came back to find that the NPC was gone. So it must have been a glitch, he thought. He continued his trek through Hyrule as he had some time to play still. This is when the changes began. They were simple but noticeable. The load time increased, but not by a lot. N64 games had next to no loading times, which suddenly were upwards of 5 seconds between screens. Every time he entered a new area, the load time seemed to drag. The next change was the music. It wouldn't load upon entering a new area. There would be a period of silence before the music would catch up. Strangely, it wasn't always the right music. The Hyrule Overworld theme was the most prevalent as it would play in areas where it wasn't supposed to, most often. This was followed by the Gerudo Fortress theme. In certain areas, the music would never load, notably inside houses or shops. The narrator wanted to know what music would play in Kokiri Village. The answer to that question was none. Stranger still, no sound played in the village at all. Exploring the village is when he noticed the strangest aspect of all. Every NPC stood in their approximate location with the same posture as the faceless NPC, arms out, feet together, and staring off in a seemingly random direction. They wouldn't even notice Link when he walked by them and they couldn't be talked to. That's when the narrator noticed the mystery NPC was back. She was in the same floating position near Link's house. Something was different this time. She appeared to be a real NPC this time. As Navi would fly over to her and indicate she was Z-targetable. He tried to talk to her, but would get damaged when he approached. He decided that he might be able to Z-target her and start a conversation. Doing this dropped the frame rate into the single digits. The dialogue box sound effect played, but it was choppy. A high-pitched version of Princess Zelda played in the same choppy manner. The game looked like it was about to freeze, but instead dialogue appeared on screen that read, "He's not moving anymore." What? Are you sad? Happy? I really can't tell. Looks like you're coming around. That's an unpleasant mask. Goodbye. The model started to shake heavily in place. The narrator was worried the game was going to break, so he left the area. The game sort of fell apart after this. Textures wouldn't load and NPCs all stood in that arms out position. Then the game turned into a black void, one in which the narrator could still move around in. He was in the marketplace and found more NPCs, but these ones seemed normal. If interacted with, they would all say the same thing. Please look out for the princess. After the last NPC's dialogue played, the re-dead scream followed and the faceless NPC had reappeared. Every NPC turned to look at her, Link included. Link began walking towards her with the scream continuing in the background. The sounds of him being hurt continued as well. This is when the narrator finally decided to shut off the game. They would turn it back on later to find no weirdness whatsoever. It was almost like they dreamed it. This would be the end of their single paranormal experience, if not for what came next. This entity was known as the Princess, and there were more sightings and stories than his. It was something he promised to expand upon in future blog entries. For now, he leaves us with the knowledge that there was no scrapped model of a girl with red hair and a white dress anywhere in the files of Ocarina of Time. This is how our story begins. A personal encounter with the entity known as the Princess. This would only be the beginning to a story that is longer than many others in its genre. Maybe a similar length to NES Godzilla, but far less remembered. Part 2 would be posted a day later, simply titled The Society. The narrator says that his experience urged him to tell absolutely everybody about what happened. His sister, friends at school, and even members of that Zelda board he mentioned in the previous section. No one believed him. Save for a few members of the board, but you can find someone to believe anything. The narrator says he's had nightmares since the incident. Nothing directly related to what he saw that day. They would instead all be about him getting stabbed or some other horrific thing happening to him. He would be about to die in his dreams, but always wake up completely fine. The story jumps forward in time here. 7 years had passed since he saw the girl in the game. He was now a college student trying to get a degree in film. He had forgotten almost entirely about his single paranormal event. That is until he received a strange message out of the blue. The message said that he wasn't alone and that the princess was real. That's what they called her, the princess. The strange NPC that haunted his console that one night 7 years ago. There was a "we" mentioned in this message, which prompted a question from the narrator. A URL was posted in the chat. He didn't know if he should trust it, but his curiosity won out in the end. The website loaded up to an image of the girl he'd seen that day 7 years ago. She looked different though. While examining the image, he noticed that the game was the reason. She was in Mega Man Legends and not Ocarina of Time. That day hadn't been a bad dream or hallucination. Here she was. Someone else had seen her. And by the looks of the thread he started to sift through, many people. The group in the thread were calling themselves the Princess Society. Here's an excerpt from the story. First, let me make one thing clear. She's real. It wasn't a dream or a hallucination. You aren't crazy. Second, she's dangerous. You should consider it a blessing that you saw her and lived. It means you had the sense to shut off the game. Not everyone can say the same. We know of at least 2 cases where players who encountered her did not shut off their game, and they are no longer with us. Here's what we know. We know she appears in video games. I don't know what game you saw her in, but she isn't confined to it. She can appear in any video game. There are some types of games that she seems to prefer, and some from which she seems to stay away. But it can be any game, on any system, from any era. She never looks exactly the same twice, but her red hair and white dress are constants. We know she usually gives an unfinished appearance. We know she calls herself the Princess. We know she can alter and glitch games in unpredictable ways. We know that if you allow this to continue for too long, something happens. We don't know what happens, but those to whom it happens turn up dead, often in ways that suggest they died in great pain. This is not a ghost story or a game. This is a very real danger. At any time, anyone playing a video game could encounter her. This is why we exist. We have to stop her. Somehow, some way. We've all come together to put an end to this and try to keep her from claiming anyone else. The final section of part 2 claims that there is some bad news that comes with this information. Now that they know about the princess, they are a target. They believe that knowing of her existence or thinking about her at all is enough for her to manifest in your game. If you see her, turn off the game. This is the end to part 2 and the introduction of where most of the substance for this story will come from. A website and a community who all know about the princess and are aware of what she's capable of. This is also where more characters and stories are being introduced, such as the ability for the princess to appear in more than just Ocarina of Time. Part 3 is mainly a collection of stories of princess sightings from the members of the board. The board was composed of just a bunch of gamers brought together by their encounter with the princess. They had no technical skills or know-how, it seemed. Really all it did was act as a place for people to share their sightings and discuss what the princess could be. The first story took place in an emulated version of Pokemon Blue. They found a strange tile on the way to Celadon City. The tile couldn't be walked over but could be interacted with. When the player clicked on it, a blank text box would appear on screen. Eventually the player continued through the game and noticed similar strange happenings to the narrator's first encounter. The music was playing in the wrong places, or not at all. The game was running sluggishly as well. Before the player could restart his emulator, he found himself back at the same spot where it all started. Now in the spot there stood a fuzzy-looking sprite of a girl. When he approached her, she had an exclamation mark appear over her head. She acted like a rival trainer, walked up to the player, and initiated a battle. Only she entered the player's character sprite to do so. In battle, she acted like one of the ghosts that your Pokemon will be too scared to fight. Instead of attacking, she would just open a dialogue box full of garbage characters. She would eventually freeze the emulator with a loud, piercing screech. Now the player has played the game since and finds that there are some lingering effects. His name is now permanently 5 blank spaces. This wouldn't be the only story we'd be told in this chapter. We'd also get a story from an Xbox wrestling game. This story has a princess appearing in the crowd as a faceless 3D model. The rest of the crowd were 2D and frozen. Instead, the princess would follow the actions of the 2 wrestlers on screen, her head swiveling in the direction of the fight. There was no crowd noise, just the sound effects from the ring. The match ended and there was a mixture of distorted crowd sounds and other sound effects. The player couldn't click on anything from the menu other than rematch. It's not said what they did after that. 2 more stories appeared in this chapter, one about a game called Vigilante 8. In this game, the player shot the princess as his car and she was destroyed like any other object in the game. When the level was completed, it skipped the story piece that appeared after missions. Instead, they were immediately loaded into a special map called Super Dreamland. The map was a contradiction to the rest of the game. It was a cartoony, fantasy map that didn't match the aesthetic of the rest of the game. Here the player found that the music was absent. There were also a few enemy cars stuck at their spawn points. They wouldn't move or interact in any way. The player blew them up to see if they would respawn and then act correctly, but they didn't. Even worse, when the cars exploded, the music came back on loudly and with artifacting. This is when another car had spawned in, or more accurately, a weird polygon vehicle that acted like a car. It drove around but only attacked if the player got close. The vehicle was weak as the player was able to destroy it with ease. The trick to this, though, was that it would spawn several more of itself with each destruction. The player quickly stopped destroying them, but soon they were destroying each other. The music kept getting louder with each new vehicle in game. This eventually became too much and chugged the game to a near halt. The player shut down the game at that point, where the music just became a high-pitched hum. The final story is not about a member's first sighting of the princess. Instead, they were already a member and saw the princess in the PC version of Portal. She was seen in the back offices near the end of the game. When the player saw her, they shut off the game. He then went to the board to log his finding, and while doing so, he heard something. "I see you," played through his headphones in a voice of one of the turrets from Portal. He shut down his PC, realizing that shutting down the game wasn't enough. This is where the narrator laments that his story was much worse than a lot of the others on the board. He then states that this would be important later. We move from personal encounters with the princess to the rules that the society tried to provide for all members. Rules that would hopefully keep everyone safe while documenting the princess, or even just while playing their games. For this section, I'll be reading the rules directly from the story, word for word. Rule 1. If you see her, you're safe if you turn off the game. She has no power if you turn off the game. You can turn it right back on without fear. She'll be gone. Note that you must turn the game completely off, meaning powering down your console. If you encounter her in a PC game, quitting the application should be enough. But this seems to vary by program, so your best bet is just to shut the computer off for a second. Rule 2. There doesn't appear to be any video game or type of video game in which she straight up cannot appear. She has strong preferences, but not limits. She only ever appears in video games. Rule 3. The princess comes for those who look for her. If you specifically play a game trying to see her, she is very likely to appear. To a lesser extent, simply thinking about her seems to increase her chance to appear. For this reason, she has a tendency to appear to people multiple times. Rule 4. Her preference for games appears to be largely chronological. She appears most frequently in N64 and PS1 games. Going further back or forward in era, she becomes less and less likely to appear. Her favorite game appears to be Ocarina of Time. We have more Ocarina of Time sightings of her than any other game by a wide margin. Rule 5. Any browser game, online multiplayer game, or game that otherwise streams a significant amount of data from the internet seems to keep her at bay. LANs also seem to hold her off to a lesser extent. Rule 6. The princess can absolutely appear even if you aren't alone. Being with a friend will not keep her away. The princess doesn't always directly appear the moment she enters the game, so be wary. Other signs she's entered a game are increased load times, music and sound distortions, graphical glitches, especially the failure of graphics to load, AI glitches, especially the disabling of AI, and the removal of text. Rule 8. Always be aware that the princess seems to be able to see you, the player, while she is in your game. She has been known to react directly to things players say or do. You can quickly make a situation far worse by saying the wrong thing. If you're trying to establish communication, keep it to simple and innocuous questions. Rule 9. She can, if sufficiently provoked, kill players. She does this rarely, but this must always be kept in mind, because next to nothing is known about how or why she does it. It does not appear to be related to the amount of time one spends playing. It does not appear to be related to the type of person you are. For now, it must be assumed it occurs at the princess's inscrutable whim. Rule 10. You cannot fight her. Once she begins whatever she does that kills her victims, there appears to be no way to fight back or resist. It is not currently known how she kills players. There is evidence to suggest that something physical appears in the room with the player, brutalizes their body, and disappears. There is nothing that directly indicates the princess jumps out of the TV and beats you to death. This is just a theory. Rule 11. If you ever get the sense while encountering the princess that she is trying to communicate with you, be extremely careful. If necessary, log onto this board and ask your fellow society members for advice. You are in a very dangerous situation, and it is likely you could trigger the princess's kill ability very easily. You could also provide the key to unlocking this entire mystery. Please consider what you do very carefully. Rule 12. The following theories are wild conjecture, and while often brought up on this board, should not be taken as fact. The princess can only enter one game at a time. While this certainly seems likely, there's no way to test it. The princess steals your soul if she kills you. All the evidence we have suggests that those she kills are simply dead. The princess is the ghost of Mr. Carver's daughter. Note, I'll get into who Mr. Carver is in a few parts from now. There's nothing to suggest that the princess is the ghost of anyone, or even a ghost at all. You can't just turn off the game, you have to unplug it. On modern consoles, the princess has been shown capable of preventing the system from powering down naturally, as this is accomplished by a program and not a simple switch being flipped. In those cases, it is indeed usually necessary to unplug the console. You don't need to do this for every console though, and the princess has only overridden a modern console's natural power down sequence once on record. Attacking the princess's avatar in-game hurts her. While it does occasionally seem to aggravate her, there's nothing to suggest that the princess could be injured or destroyed simply by attacking her with in-game weapons. The princess will be destroyed when someone figures out her true name. This is just a rumor that got way out of hand. I could totally fight off the princess if she attacked me. You are welcome to test this theory, but do not expect to be correct. These are the rules created by the members of the society. It doesn't say who specifically created each rule, and they are more or less creations from testing. The ones that I find most interesting are the rules around the rumors and the one where the princess has killed players. Let's tackle them in that order. The rumors cover many different ideas surrounding who or what the princess is. The rumor that she can only be in one game at a time is one that they believe but have no proof for. On the complete other end, the idea that finding out her name will banish her seems like a reference of sorts. Like some sort of Rumpelstiltskin storyline. They have no proof that it works that way though. More importantly though, is the rule surrounding the deaths the princess has caused. It doesn't elaborate on this at all. How would we know who she has killed? Maybe board members went on princess hunts and never returned, or maybe it's from people who knew members who passed. I'm sure we'll get answers later. I'm curious how she kills her victims. She doesn't leave the game, but can summon an entity to kill for her. That would make her far more dangerous than these people seem capable of handling. This next part is the turning point for the story. It's called The Mistake. And this is where they answer one of our previous questions. This is how they found out the princess could kill. The chapter starts with a retelling of how the Foundation formed. It came from a GameFAQs board created in 2003. Back then it was only a handful of gamers who had witnessed this odd entity in their games. They would then go online and talk about their experience and realize that others had seen it too. Eventually the board members began to grow into friends. They shared all manner of personal information, which eventually led to 2 members realizing they lived close. This sparked an idea that they could meet up and try to find out the secrets of the princess together. At this time, most board members had only seen the princess in quick glances, but they'd been too intimidated to pursue anything about her. The 2 members, who will go by Adam and Brian, met up to start their search into the princess proper. They stated that they would relay any updates to the other members by 6 p.m. whether they found her or not. People were excited, but then let down when 6 p.m. rolled around without an update. Then 7, 8, and finally midnight. There was no update coming from the pair. After a week and a half wait, Brian finally logged on. He would only make one post. Adam is dead. The princess is evil. If you see her, turn off the game. The forum bombarded Brian with questions about what had happened, but that answer wouldn't come until 6 months later, when Brian finally returned to the board to tell his story. Chapter 6 relays the two's meeting. They met at Adam's house with a stack of N64 games. The two were a bit awkward as they realized that neither of them had a plan for how the investigation would go. Brian has the games and a notebook, while Adam had a knife for some reason. Like the princess was a physical entity that could be fought off. They started to play through the stack of games, noting what they found in each, which was nothing. They played through every game from Snowboard Kids to F-Zero and GoldenEye. There was no sign of her, until they got to the last game in the stack. It was Ocarina of Time, her supposed favorite game. The pair loaded it up and noticed the slightly longer loading times immediately. She was here. She had to be. Though Brian hopes the game was just glitching out, as he expected something bad could happen. The princess didn't appear to them right away. They looked in every place others had reported seeing her, but there was nothing. From the field to the castle and back, she was nowhere. There was a moment where Brian thought he saw someone, but Adam said it was probably the cuckoo lady in the village. The odd thing was that she wasn't where she normally stood. It was only then that they realized that the NPCs were all going missing. Finally, Adam demanded that the princess show herself because they knew she was there. This is when Link fell to the floor as if falling in a hole that wasn't there. They were in a room with a fairy fountain. Floating at its center was the princess, looking as if she was expecting them. We move into the next chapter, which starts with the two approaching the princess. The music, which felt welcoming a moment ago, began to distort until it became an electronic buzz. The princess floated at an odd angle with her arm vibrating to a frequency that seemed to mimic the buzzing music in the background. Brian was ready to pack up and go by this point, but Adam wanted to press on. He approached the pedestal, and the game glitched out in a way that it hadn't before. A single text box appeared, but it was empty. Then a yes or no prompt followed it. Adam clicked yes, even at the resistance of Brian. This is when the princess would start attacking Link. The movements were quick, too quick to really dodge. Every time Link approached the princess, he would freeze up and then be open for another attack. She was acting like a re-dead now, paralyzing Link with a scream. The princess would then latch onto Link and drain the textures off of him along with his health. He would eventually become simple white polygons. Link fell over dead once his final heart went out, but this wasn't the end. After a few seconds, he would get back up to his feet with full health. This happened every time he was killed by the princess. This is when the boss fight began, or at least it felt like a boss fight. Adam tried everything and with each fail grew angrier. Brian assumed that Adam was a naturally angry person and that he used video games to get out his aggression. Nothing Brian said to him seemed to matter, as he continued to die over and over to the princess. Eventually they found out that bombs worked at stunning her, so that Link could get in a few hits with his sword. Each sword strike sent red particles flying everywhere, and also had the princess release an awful scream. The princess seemed to have multiple boss phases. Every time Adam damaged her enough, a new phase would begin. 6 is how many Brian wrote down in his notes. 6 different phases that Adam fought her in, each one different from the prior one. If Link died during any of them, it was back to the first phase. Adam seemed to be enjoying his fight with the princess. Each death he let out a frustrated grunt, but every hit to her made him chuckle. It was all becoming too much for Brian. He decided he needed to end the game before something bad happened. When he reached for the power cord, the princess stopped and stared at the screen. "Don't turn it off." It was Adam who said it, and had his knife leveled at Brian. He told him to leave, and Brian grabbed his games, except for the one that was in the console, and left. Adam was found dead later that day. His body had been brutalized to the point of internal bleeding. His face was spared, but not likely for a good reason. It was believed that whatever did this to him wanted him conscious during his beating. His chest had been almost entirely caved in, which is what led to his death. The most puzzling part of all this was that Brian's knife had been found with some dulling at the tip, and it was a little bent. Adam's death would be the catalyst that would change how the society operated. No more could they just pretend that the princess was a fascinating entity found in certain video games. She was a threat, one that they now had to acknowledge. If the princess was so dangerous, why even try to communicate? What's the end goal if she could kill any who tried? A hostile entity is something you'd rather avoid than talk to, even though it seemed like communication was impossible. They found something that proved otherwise. They found a story of someone who actually opened a line of communication with the princess. She was a 10-year-old girl, and she was also her first victim. The story is called The Sisters, and it follows the recollection of a girl named Faye and her sister Ellie. Faye was the older sister, and she didn't much like video games. She preferred to read books, but her sister was the complete opposite. She loved video games, and was ecstatic when she got her Nintendo 64 and a copy of Banjo-Kazooie. Ellie began playing her console constantly. It was a borderline obsession for her. She also loved to draw and would often draw the adventures she had in the games. She drew her Pokemon team and her adventures with Link. It was expected that you would find a lot of drawings of different games in her room. So when Faye walked into her sister's room one day, and something she'd never seen before was hanging on the wall, she had to ask her about it. It was a drawing that must not be complete yet, she thought. It was of a girl in a white dress, but with no face. When asked about this, Ellie would say that it was a character she'd see in her game sometimes. She thought that she was an angel. Later, Faye would come back with a question about what the angel did in the game. Ellie would say that she wasn't an angel, but instead a princess. A princess with the ability to help Ellie play her games. She could make enemies disappear and even help fly her to hard-to-reach areas. Faye found that interesting, but thought it was odd that the pictures she drew of the princess still remained faceless. Some time had passed, and Faye found Ellie still playing that one game. She should have finished it by now, as it was definitely her longest playtime yet. There was also a strange change in her drawings. They featured less characters from the games and were mostly of the princess, all without faces ever added to them. When confronted about her obsession with the game, she got combative with her sister. Faye was worried because she'd mentioned that she had to draw the princess or she would hurt her. This was concerning to Faye, but Ellie brushed it off by saying in-game. It still felt weird to her though. This all came to a head one night when Ellie came to her sister's room crying. She said she had a nightmare, one in which the princess showed up and showed her where she comes from. It was a bad place, a kingdom where nothing is right. No sky, no grass, no water, just nothing but brainless creations. Faye would comfort her by saying it was just a dream. Ellie wouldn't accept this and left the room after saying that the princess was real. She slammed the door on the way out, and finally her mom stepped in. She had her game taken away and would eventually be sent to a psychiatric care facility, where she was given some medication. This led to a big change in Ellie. She was more apathetic, less creative, and had no interest in video games. This would seem to lead to no more talk with the princess. She even agreed that she wasn't real. This would seem to be the end of it, except for the night where she never came down for dinner. They searched the house for her but couldn't find her anywhere. That is, until they checked the game room, the place where she never went anymore. Inside they found her lying on the couch, dead, with the TV turned on. This story is important for a few reasons. Not only is it a recollection of the first murder by the princess, but there's a little something else there. This is where we get a little glimpse into the princess and her motives. She comes from an incomplete world, one that torments her. As she herself is incomplete, this makes sense. The reason behind why she kills those she comes in contact with is sort of hinted at here as well. Part 9 is where a backstory for the princess is officially created. Back in the late 90s, a small studio was working on a game that wanted to ride on the recent interest in sword and sorcery games created by the soon-to-be-released Ocarina of Time. The team had started progress on a game known internally as Hero and Princess. The game would contain many of the elements that would become staples in Zelda games. Dungeons acting as progression, a grand adventure, and collecting a bunch of items. The most ambitious idea, though, was the creation of an AI ally who would help the player. This AI would be fully autonomous and have goals they wanted to reach outside of the player's quest. Depending on the player's actions in-game, the ally could either be happy to work alongside them, or begrudgingly do so. The AI proved to cause too many headaches, but the lead writer, who was also the lead artist, had already created a character to fill the role. She was entirely his brainchild, and her name was the Princess. He had done so much to create her, but never found a proper name to fit. He had hoped that it would come to him with time. Eventually, the dream of a fully AI ally kept getting pushed back and back until the team realized they just couldn't do it. This shattered Mr. Carver, the person mentioned before, and he fought for as long as he could to bring the princess to life. He seemed to be spiraling in real time. His office was covered in drawings of the princess. At last, he was fired after demanding that the princess be added to the game. He went home, and there he did something terrible. He was found later in a pool of his own blood, surrounded by drawings of the princess. The ones that lay alongside him didn't have her face drawn in. This is where the society believes she originates. The game never released or even made it to beta. This didn't mean that the game was abandoned, though. The game would continue its dev cycle for 5 more months. This then stretched into 2 years before cancellation. It was a rather rough 2 years. First, an artist for the project named Gina had been found unconscious in the office. She was clutching a piece of paper. What they found was a drawing of the princess that she didn't remember drawing. She would resign a day later. There was a glitch that was affecting everyone working on the game. The princess's model would appear in random locations, and when she did, the game would stop working properly. It wouldn't crash, but there would be some obstruction, like she would replace a quest important NPC who couldn't be interacted with anymore. Slowly, more and more people were leaving the project, but the highest turnover was with game testers. They would leave without explaining why. It was a tester who brought this story to the society, actually. 2 years after the game's cancellation, the last casualty of the project would happen. The executive producer of the game would jump from his second-story window. There were no signs of forced entry or anything. The only thing that was found was that he'd been playing Ocarina of Time at the time of his death. The game was still running when found. This whole story comes from Dan, a game tester who worked on the project. He would explain his connection to the princess further in the next post. He explained that he was the lead game tester and that somehow brought the princess to him more often. She always came out when he was testing the game. She nearly always ruined his runs and made sure that she knew he was there. Dan hated the princess. She ruined a game that he was excited to be working on. She ruined his favorite job. And she was also ruining his life. She would appear to him as often as she could, no matter what he was playing. He was determined to find a way to stop her. The most severe reaction he got out of the princess was when he took a shock baton to his console. When she was on screen, he shocked his N64 and heard a visceral screech come out of the system. It hurt her, but it didn't stop her. It only ruined his console. What Dan was working towards is something that he mentioned is scribbled in his notes. He has been trying to find her weakness, a weakness that he believes he has found. He continues this train of thought by saying that she has the ability to enter any game she wants, but she can't leave unless you turn off the console. Dan says he's done it. He's found a way to trap her in the game. He simply turned off the screen. He's found a way to trap her in the GameCube port of Ocarina of Time. He knows she's trapped in there because he can hear the GameCube turning and whining, like she's trying to overload it. He ends this section with a link and a time. Dan is going to stream his confrontation with the princess and wants the society to be his witnesses. The narrator didn't know if he should follow this final attempt to understand this horror, but he clicked the link anyway. The stream started exactly when it was supposed to. There was a camera facing the TV where the princess was trapped. Dan was also on screen, and he looked as ragged as a man who had spent his life pursuing a ghost would. He was mainly illuminated by a blue light. The stream chat was a mix of what you'd expect. It's not mentioned how many people were in the chat, but it's expected that every person in the forums was watching. Even with whatever that number may be, there were still trolls in the chat. Only to be expected of the internet, I suppose. After a bit, Dan turned on his TV. What appeared on screen was Ocarina of Time. Well, mostly. The HUD had been replaced by shifting textures. Link was twisted with polygons jutting out of his arms at odd angles, and the environment was highly altered. It looked vaguely like Ocarina, but off in just as many ways. The worst part was the music, which just sounded like a mashed up collection of instrumental sounds. Dan approached a sign with a message for him. "Turn back, buddy. You shouldn't be here. Love and kisses, Daniel." This message enraged Dan for a reason unknown to the stream. He would then go off on a tirade about what he was seeing. He asked why he was seeing this, and why now. The chat was screaming at him for answers, but he acted as if they weren't even there. This would be a continuing problem throughout the entire stream. Dan continued exploring the game. There were so many random changes, objects where they shouldn't be, NPCs arranged in strange ways. The topography itself was twisted and glitchy. There were also textureless NPCs surrounding various objects in the world. Dan headed to Lake Hylia and found himself instead in a large cave. This is where a large set of eyes were seen staring. Those eyes belonged to a large creature found at the center of the room. It was built from the different bodies of the models in the game. Arms and legs jutted out at random angles. The body parts belonged to the many enemies found in the game. Dan started to go off again. He said, "Are you kidding me? This is what you've been doing this whole time? Is this why you did it? It's over." There's a scream that shot out of the television speakers. Dan shouted back at the screen. It was like he was having an argument, one where the viewers couldn't hear the other side. "You're dead," he said. "You deserve to be forgotten." The stream turned to a black screen after this. Chat shouted into the void, but soon it came back. There was a new addition. A little black box appeared on screen along with Dan. White text populated the box. A message was slowly being built. Dan didn't seem to notice. He kept playing as if nothing had changed. All the NPCs he encountered had their arms stretched out in the same way that the princess did. The next word in the box appeared. As he continued, the NPCs slowly started to surround him. They hadn't moved exactly, but every time the camera did, they would appear. The message was starting to become clear. This is where you... With one final turn, the princess was right next to Link. "Left me." He cursed at her and the screen went black again. It wasn't blank though. Text ran across the screen. "Left me" was repeated over and over again. The stream sound continued without a visual other than the text. Crashing sounds were heard, things were falling over, a shout from Dan before it turned to screaming. The sounds of bashing and smashing. It continued until Dan himself went silent. This is when the society went back to the message board to discuss what they'd seen. The message boards were being flooded with messages, every single board, but not from the members. These messages were angry rambles. All left, you left, he left, gone, broken, dark, wanted, can't, won't, need, please, need. Hurting, 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 always say it can't, stop, anger, anger, anger. It would go on like this in every single board. There were a few messages that caught my attention. Never wanted to kill anyone, please, was near the bottom, along with what is it, what is it, what am I? This leads the story to its current day. The narrator wonders how the princess was able to take over the message board. It wasn't a video game, it was a domain on the internet, yet she broke all the rules they had set for her, every single one. He wonders if she could do it again. What is she really capable of? The truth, it seems, is that the princess was there the whole time. The banner of the site was an image of the princess. She was featured on every page, every board. Images, videos, snapshots, an artist rendition. She was everywhere. She wasn't a ghost. No, she was a piece of living fiction. One that they manifested through their fears, through their interactions, and through their belief in her. When they'd all watched the stream, somehow it had made her powerful enough to finally do the one thing they wanted her to do. She communicated with all of them. They deleted every image, removed every mention of her, all in a hope that she would not come for them next. Though it may already be too late. He's been losing contact with many of the members. He figures many are trying to go into hiding, to forget about the whole thing. Others, he's not so sure. Best case scenario, they've just moved on. Worst case scenario, well, it may come for them all. Here's an excerpt from the end of the story. I'm not completely heartless. I know she's fighting for her survival now. For her, being forgotten is death. She does what she does in the hopes of keeping her memory alive. To that end, perhaps my telling her story to the world is a small act of mercy. Maybe the thoughts I've lent her will ease her pain somewhat. I don't know. By the way, this isn't why I wrote all this. What I've told you could put you in great danger, but it could also save your life. You're a target now, and in the months and years ahead, she may well come for you. But I've also given you all the knowledge you need to keep yourself safe. Do not try to fight her. Do not try to talk to her. Do not try to outsmart or trap her. Don't investigate. Don't try to understand. Don't try to be a hero. Don't try to be her savior. It is my sincere hope that I've given you all the answers you want, so you won't make our mistake and try to investigate further. There's one and only one thing you need to do to be safe. If you see her, turn off the game. This was The Princess, my personal favorite gaming creepypasta. It's a rather long story with an initially cliché premise, but one that is used well. There's a certain magic to an entity haunting a cartridge. But what if it haunted every cartridge, every console, and even computer programs? There are a few lingering questions we have about the story, even by its end. It doesn't play its hand all in the finale, and rather leaves clues and hints throughout. What were those questions? Or better yet, who is the princess? That's what we're left with. Who is the princess? She's an idea that never came to fruition. Something an obsessed man made with so much passion that he couldn't contain it. When he was told that she would never exist, he took his own life. This could have been how she was created, and there are hints that this is the answer. Though there's also a possibility that he was her first real victim. The princess is a video game NPC that never got to exist. In her need for existence, she started to invade other games. She stuck mainly to older games, but also appeared in Portal, which was new at the time of the story. Or new enough, at least. Her original game, being a game inspired by Ocarina of Time, explains why she chose that game so often. But I think there's more to it than that. The story was written a year after the most popular gaming creepypasta was written, after all. Zelda games are generally just popular, but having another creepypasta set in the Zelda series seemed obvious. What we're really left with is that ending. It seems clear to me that the princess was going after the society members now that they've tried to erase her. They all wanted to remove her from not just the site, but their memories. This means that everyone was put on a list, and everyone will meet their end, including the narrator. The princess longs for existence, but she can't will herself into it. All she can do is invade other games, make other people see her, and believe in her. She can only live on in those rare sightings, in screen grabs by players, and in retellings by us. She lives on in this piece of internet folklore. We all see her now. We are all aware of her existence. so now she exists. The princess isn't a creepypasta that lives without interest. It was kind of popular at the time the blog went live, but most of the community engagement is hard to find. There are comments below each post and some fan art, but it didn't spread nearly as far as other stories in the genre. This story feels like it was inspired by Ben Drowned, but wanted to take the story presented in the first arc to its natural progression. Whereas Ben Drowned took a turn down into an online cult, the princess had a society of people who wanted to study her. They were out in the open, mostly, with what they were searching for and what they found. It's a story more about the horrors that can hide not just in the cartridge, but our memories and thoughts. If you see her once, there's a chance you'll never see her again. But if you've seen her once, you'll most likely see her again. In fact, just having knowledge of her is enough for you to see her. In essence, this story could have been written by her to spread awareness and thus become real. Another story that I feel could have been inspiration was NES Godzilla. The way she's able to interact with the game, at least near the end, is similar in a way, but not quite as close as Ben Drowned's inspiration. The princess isn't just a personal demon haunting a cartridge to attack a specific person. It's instead an entity trying to survive by haunting as many people as it can. Something that I think the princess does really well and different from those two stories is making her an actual threat. Red threatens the player and hurts them in a way in the finale, but not quite in the same way. In Ben Drowned, the story takes a different path entirely. In The Princess, she kills the player if they enrage her enough. Though it might be more accurate to say that another entity appears and kills people for her. She doesn't seem to be able to control it, a phrase she mentions multiple times throughout the ending. Instead, she just watches them die. The killer is never seen in the story physically, but we all know it is physical. It bent a knife after all. It knocked things over, and it somehow crushes people. Overall, I find the story to be one of the better written ones to come from the golden age of creepypastas. It has a unique source for its story, and it covers the full saga of an entity without giving away too many details. They didn't over-explain how she works, and she was never redeemed at the end. She's a dangerous entity that remains a threat until the very end. My first time reading the story was much before it was done. I read the first couple of uploads, but got lost in the multitude of other stories that were scattered around the internet at the time. It wasn't until my research for the gaming creepypasta iceberg that I finally finished the story, and it quickly became one of my favorites. The story has the potential to become as big as Ben or NES Godzilla. It could have been so much more popular if it just had done some visuals. Visuals of even just a corrupted version of Zelda, which had already been done in a few stories at this point, would have gone a long way. There are pieces of art and some 3D models that were created, but these were not attached to the story directly. The story kind of explains why there's not a bunch of art or gameplay footage of the princess. They wanted to erase her from the internet, to stop her forever. It was a pipe dream, as she can just create new sightings and new victims. And now that you all know the story, maybe you'll see the princess. Maybe she'll haunt your game. Why don't you dust off your old N64 and your copy of Ocarina of Time? Who knows? Maybe you'll see the princess. Just remember the most important rule. If you do see her, turn off the game. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters, Nora Kingsley, Icy-Man, Austin Henshaw, Memtendo, Miriam Reyes, Joe Gillespie, Master Jags, Keely Haig, Comically Odd, Astrovert, and Xenoverse Black. And special thanks to my Sonic.exe tier member, Mew. And thank you to everyone who watches my channel. I hope you all have a good night.